Hello and welcome to What Are You Saying? #Ways, where we talk about topics in the news as it affects us all. I am Sayome Sale, and as you can see, I'm alone in the studio, but I am super excited. Happy Democracy Day, 12th of June, declared Democracy Day. All right, so today we have a very interesting conversation. Just kind of like unpacking what democracy means to us and analyzing how far we have progressed as a country, and that would be the conversation for today. And here's what we found as today's quote. It says, democracy is about the people, by the people, and for the people. It's not about the politicians, it's about the citizens. And this was the quote from Obi Ezekwesili. So right, on Democracy Day, we mark a very significant milestone in our nation's journey. We celebrate the triumph of democracy over the unwavering spirit of Nigerians who have worked tirelessly to build a more just and equitable society. So tonight we would reflect on this journey towards democratic governance and the progress we've made, and what work that still needs to be done. And we have a guest with us and a guest co-anchor. Our guest is Ikemesit Effiong, and our guest co-anchor will be Faith Ojeku. They will join me much later in studio. But first, let me run off on a break. When I come back from that break, I want to see what I found. I'll tell you what I found today in the news. Stay with us. All right. Today, June 12, marks a significant milestone in Nigeria's history. That's Democracy Day. This day commemorates the country's transition from military rule to democracy in 1999, marking the beginning of a new era of political freedom, human rights, and the rule of law. On this day, Nigerians celebrate the sacrifices of pro-democracy activists, civil society organizations, and international pressures that led to the country's return to democratic governance. Now, the day also honors the annulled presidential election of June 12 in 1993, won by Chief Moshood Abiola, a symbol of the struggle for democracy. It's a day to reflect on the progress made, the challenges faced, and the need for continued effort to deepen democracy and ensure a better future for all Nigerians. All right, so, today is going to be all about Democracy Day. The conversation would just be revolving around the topic. It's a very significant day in our Nigerian history, so I'll save this for much later. But today I was privileged to be invited to the book launch is a friend of the house, Dele Farotimi, and his latest book, in case you haven't seen it, Omo. So this book is Nigeria and its Criminal Justice System. And, it was just an opportunity for me to, hear firsthand the reason behind this particular book, because, I hear there are lots of expose in the book with a lot of proofs to back it. Just listening in the room and how he talked about having to go through at least 4 levels of filters, like running it by 4 different lawyers to look at it, because, again, from the conversation in the room, the book presents a lot of factual events that happened, especially within the judiciary system. And so, of course, as a lawyer, you have to be very careful, extremely careful, because whatever you say or whatever you pen down, can be used, against you if it turns out to be false. So it means that from his deduction, there was a lot of work that went into this book. I just started reading it. If not, I would have given you a snippet. But again, we went on the streets to find out what democracy, our 25 years, what it means to people. And so that's what we're going to play for you. And I'll be right back.
That we've fallen. It's so sad to see how complacent and how so unconcerned, because I don't know how long we can take this kind of hopelessness. I used to have long arguments with my father before he died, and it was just about the state of the country at the time. And I kept saying to him that the way we're going, we're heading for the rocks.
Hope, we have to keep it alive. Nigeria is a subject that is our concern. This is where we own. This is where we are citizens, and our voice should always matter. So when it comes to hope, we have to keep it alive, and our voice should never be taken away from us. We have a right to life, right to voice our opinion. So it is a hope that we must keep alive regardless.
On the day that is meant to be celebrating democracy, the people's right to free speech are being violently repressed on the street. People are being arrested for daring to express their fundamental right to free speech and assembly. The impotence of the people's will has continued till date, because that is what you are still saying. Our will, our collective will was rendered impotent in 1993. Our collective will was triggered in 2015. Our collective will has again been 2022 to 23 to be exact.
Democracy, most people may not understand. Democracy, the essence of democracy is not just about good governance. It's not the only model that can give you good governance. When you say good governance now, under democracy is different from good governance under military rule or aristocracy or theocracy. The reason is this. The essence of democracy is to give people equality, liberty, and freedom.
We know what's good for the country. Most of the time we want to put it on our leaders. Everybody has their role to play. As simple as do not drop debts where you are not supposed to. It's going to go a long way.
Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges.
With the growing youth population and very little engagement.
That is a ticking time bomb.
We're blessed people with a diverse culture who have a lot to say.
And yes, we are talking.
It is important we drive conversations that informs, inspires, and influences thoughts and actions.
If we say there is beauty in diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture.
We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation.
As we are the hope for the future,
yesterday's conversation shaped today.
What are you saying to shape your tomorrow?
We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you.
I think that this is time where, we're trying to move this country forward. All hands should be on deck. And this is a time where the drivers of this economy should begin to ask the right questions. If you say that Nigerians are losing faith in the currency or the naira, then why is that happening? Why are we losing faith? If we can answer that question, then we get to the next. So what can we now do? And how do we do it? So these are some of the questions that we need to ask. But of course, it's not far-fetched. We already know what the answer is. We already know what the challenges are. First of all, you want to talk about, the fact that you need to close the gap between, inflation. So for instance, let's talk about the U.S. The U.S. inflation rate is at 3.5, if I'm not mistaken, for 2024.
If we
and
had
you're looking
those
at
kind of
Nigeria,
numbers,
3 point, come on. And we're talking about 33 point something at this point in time. So, but it's already been established that if you have this, two countries, one that has, a higher inflation rate, the value of the naira or the value of their currency would always drop.
I think assessment will be more centralized. So what it means is the fact that people study because of assessment, right? People study so that they can pass their WAEC and jump and get into school. So what will happen is the fact that the exams like IGCSE, WAEC, and all these examinations will find common ground and become more centralized, because students now are not studying only from their own country. They are studying from other countries as well, having access to content from other countries. So I think education will become more centralized with technology. I think education will be more accessible, more cheaper, and be more flexible, so that children in marginalized communities will be able to have access to education because they can now work and then go to school at the same time. They are not locked within the four walls of the classroom because of the flexibility that technology offers. I think that there's just a whole lot of good that can happen as a result of education technology.
All right, thanks for staying with us. Now, Democracy Day is celebrated in Nigeria, right, as a form of transitioning from the military rule to democracy. It occurred on on the 29th of May in 1999. The day honors the country's journey towards democratic governance, freedom, and human rights. It is also a time for Nigerians to reflect on the progress made, challenges faced, and the future of democracy in the country. Our guest, Ikemesit Effiong, is a legal practitioner, is a friend of the house, a geopolitical analyst, security and research consultant, communications professional, and a public affairs commentator. He's joined us live in studio. We also have Faith Ifueko Ojeku. She is, what role will I give you right now? I think...
I'm a guest.
But I want to say that she's a fintech expert, right? So let's leave it there. She's a fintech expert. So if you want to do all the money moves, right, Fueko is here for you, but she's a very passionate Nigerian as well. And and we're happy to have both of you in studio. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I thought I was going to do this alone, but praise Jesus. We're having this conversation.
We almost.
Yeah. We almost did. Boy, Kemesi, let me first of all start with you, right? When you hear Democracy Day, what does that mean to you as a person?
Well, I think fundamentally it means that I have a voice. I have a say in how my life is organized, right? Because I engage with my leaders. I'm informed about what decisions they are making or decisions they are considering, and I'm able to make an effective contribution, right, to society. I think back to all of us here in the room now are creatures of the military era, and I think back to how we were back then, and we were just receiving things. Yeah. It was whatever happened in Abuja, right, you just had to deal with it. Any form of critical discourse, asking questions, seeking to understand, right, how the decision-making processes of government work was met with resistance or outright oppression.
But Ikemesit, let me come to you, Faith. With what Ikemesit is saying about, with what he's saying, is it not the same people that just removed military uniform and they wore agbada? And do you agree with him that you have some level of freedom, you can express yourself freely? Do you feel that same sentiment with Ikemesit?
So I would say that I do. I still recall my parents then when we were growing up, and even in their place of work, trying to discuss things about the government. It was such a critical time. They can't even talk about it. We have to go home and they have to quietly talk to each other. I still have that memory. So for me, democracy is freedom, and I think we're there, right? But what we fail to understand as a people is a journey. We try to think that we can have solutions, like the abrupt solutions to all the problems we have, but democracy is a journey. when Olusegun Obasanjo came in, we started having that freedom. We started having more people come back to Nigeria. We started having the economy pick up and all. So that tells you that we were on a journey. But the challenge now is that that journey, in a way, we kind of missed it. So for me, I'm hopeful, because we have to use the word hope, that we should get back to that journey. And then we'll be very proud to say, yeah, we're proud Nigerians. We have our voices again. And I think that's, for me, that's democracy.
Okay, so let me come back to UK message, right? In your opinion, if we truly want to practice democracy as it should be practiced, who do you think are your major stakeholders? Because it's important for us to have clarity. I feel like one of the biggest problems we face as a people is ignorance, right? Some of us are informed, some of us are ill-informed, some of us don't even have any information at all, right? And so every time we're always struggling. And when certain scripts are being played, we all jump on it because, again, you're not able to read beyond the narratives, right? So when you say democracy in its true self, which is freedom, which is what you've identified it as, what do you think, or who do you think are the key stakeholders to protect that freedom?
I think fundamentally it's us, it's the citizens, right? It's voters, it's taxpayers, right? So the thing about, when you think about the fact that we've been a democracy now, continuously for 25 years, right? You just think about any 25-year-old, right? We've all been 25, I hope all of us have been 25 at some point.
At some point.
Right. You're basically supposed to be a responsible adult. You make decisions for yourself. You take care of yourself. You pick up your bills and all of that. And I feel like our democracy should get to that point now, right? This hand-me-down politics of personality, just being welded to a particular person because it's from your ethnic group or you have a similar religious affiliation, we need to get past that. And I think the first thing that we need to do in order to be better citizens, engaged citizens, is to understand that institutions build democracies, right? Because every institution will outlive us. I was at the platform event, right? Today, the democracy event was organized by the Covenant Nation, and I think it was Anambra Governor Chukwuma Soludo that mentioned MAMSA. Right now, if you were not born in the 80s, that name will not ring a bell. But just to show you the longevity of organizations, I'm just using this as an illustrative example. MAMSA eventually evolved to the National Orientation Agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Many people right now may be somewhat vaguely familiar with what the National Orientation Agency is, what it does, and all of that. What it represents. Exactly. But the antecedents of that, during the Babangida administration, it needs to, because even then, we had military leaders that thought, okay, Nigerians needed to understand governance better, understand what it means to be an engaged citizenry, understand what it means to be involved, right, in governance at the local level. That's why MAMSA was put in place, right? But MAMSA is an institution which has outlived military dictatorship. It's well in its 5th decade under another guise of being implemented. And what we need to understand as citizens is that those kind of institutions, we should first understand what their precedents are and what the best value that they can provide in this particular setting would be, and then empower those institutions. If you think about the elections, everybody complaining and being critical about INEC's performance. That's an institution that we had a lot of expectations of because lots of people invested time, invested resources, invested their relational capital to ensure it was in the best position to conduct a good enough election. Now, we spoke in post-election and we had a conversation about INEC. And it was a very, very, heated conversation, right? One of the things that we really, really need to do as citizens in order to make our democracies work is, the president is important, lawmakers are important, your governor is important, your institutions are probably more critical. On a day-to-day, you would engage with them. We pay levies and charges to them. There are faceless people who are employed by these institutions that are making decisions on a day-to-day basis that affect all of us, right? And that conversation doesn't get as much airplay as all of the other things that we see out there. So in order for us to transition into being a more mature democracy, we need to hold our institutions accountable. The second final point, so these are just very, very low-hanging fruits that we can do, is to be more engaged at a local level. Who's your chairman? Who's your local government chairman? Who's the councillor representing the ward where you live, right? They are responsible for important priorities around primary healthcare, for example, around ensuring that the roads are properly maintained and fixed.
Drainages
right?
are fixed.
Drainages and, environmental sanitation.
Basic amenities.
Basic amenities, right? You can use them as channels to even engage with, bigger institutions, especially at a state level. In my community in Maryland, for example, we've had this back and forth, right, with our electricity service provider around the tariffs were being charged versus the actual supply that were being, and we drag our councillor, we drag our chairman in. Whenever we have meetings, they are there. If they are not there, we shout. That's how democracy works. If you look at ancient Greek democracy, it was very, very local. Every man of a taxable age and every man of majority was required to come to the agora or the square, right, to sit down and deliberate on the issues of the day. And as a collective, decisions are taken, which they thought at the time would be the best representation of the kind of decision-making they need. We need to get back to that. There's a lot of work.
But we about there.
So just picking back to what he said, I recall taking a trip recently to Kaduna. And while getting to my parents, the neighborhood they were living in, and I saw that the roads are still bad as that. Like, I went there maybe 4 years or 5 years back, and I saw that the last part that they actually fixed, that's where they stopped. And that's not been fixed. And I had to ask, I said, don't you people have a local government?
Voice of correction is about 15 years back.
Oh, okay, sorry. I asked, I said, don't you have a councillor or what's the local government chairperson? And my dad just chuckled and laughed and said they don't see the person. So I think Lagos has even evolved because you're telling me that you call this and call that.
Yeah.
In all these other states, they don't have anybody to call. So I agree that the stakeholders for democracy should be the people, right? There are three people that oftentimes my husband says are the core problems of Nigeria. We have the religious leaders, we have the political class, and we also have the civil servants. Not the citizen, actually, the civil servants. Now, I'm saying the civil servants, tying up to what he's saying about creating institutions. We have to look at that. The truth is that Nigeria that was working before had stronger institutions.
Are failing to see that. Is it not possible that these institutions are kept comatose, intentionally and deliberately? So that these institutions will come. Because again, you rightly mentioned, I don't even know who the current NOA chairperson, what did they call him, MD or whatever it is.
I mean, I only know the person because I met her in Abuja
like
4 weeks ago.
It's a lady.
Apparently, yes.
No verse, it's your job to know that. Now you be the data person, that will not concern
That's
me.
part of the problem.
The point I'm trying to make, you remember when we were growing up, there were jingles, even in pidgin English, they were very active. If there was anything the government wanted to pass across, they would say it in pidgin, in all languages. Yeah. So whether you missed it in English, there was something else happening. I have not heard anything. You understand? We're talking about ethnic diverse, ethnic rivalry and all of those things that we're talking about, and all the religious rivalry that we have, the ethnic rivalry and all of those things that we are having as a people.
Let me say this.
Nobody is helping us to understand that we are one. We are first of all Nigerians. Before, even this new national anthem, right? Abi, the old new national anthem.
The old new one.
Ruth, wait, let me land this point. This old new national anthem. What is the job of an NOA?
To let us know.
Immediately that was announced, they should have run a campaign. So people will start to. So the fact that some people even know the lyrics now is because people went out of their way, went on YouTube to find those videos. But where is the NOX campaign on just educating us on the new lyrics for the national anthem? Our players, the Super Eagles, went for a match and they couldn't, so they had to revert back.
So our eyes are
please, let me also argue. We always try to put out this narrative that we're divided by religious lines and maybe tribal lines. And in reality, we're not.
It's false, yeah.
We are actually not. Because I would tell you that you can barely say, okay, I am Benin now. How many people from Benin or Edo State that are my friends? I have other tribes. And we never have tribal
things. So I think that we amplify it so that it becomes a message to use as a tool, especially when politicians want certain things to be done or get to their own way. So I think we need to, first of all, start reducing the voice we give that
narrative, yeah.
Then you look at education. I think where we have a problem is that the way we're running our education system, I feel it's a faulty platform. Because you need to be able to know who is a Nigerian. A little child should be proud of being a Nigerian, and they need to know, okay, what defines a Nigerian. We need to know our culture. We need to appreciate. No, I know it's an ideal world, but imagine a world where you actually paint a picture to a little child about Nigeria. There's no way that Nigeria will not be better.
No, I agree. It's like this positivity is too much.
We have to have it.
I mean, can I just quickly respond on the institutional issue? This is why I say the points that you made about the shortcomings of the National Orientation Agency to do things like increase awareness on things that the government, would want us to know about is the reason why we need more engagement with those institutions, right? Yeah. So, sitting down and having a conversation, it's not like I was at an event, they just happened to attend, I struck up a conversation because I was on a panel. For some reason, they liked what I said, and we actually sat down and we had a very long conversation around what some of the challenges are. And a lot of these challenges are not known. They are, outdated and really outmoded modes of procurement that they need to go through before they can even get a budget out, before they can even design a campaign and all of that. This nimbleness that, those of us in the private sector used to, basically do things and break stuff and then, we'll iterate along the way. That's not the kind of mentality they have. So part of our engagement with a lot of our civil service colleagues and stakeholders has to be transitioning them into a 21st century of service delivery.
Wait. You see, this is where I say, too often, I go soon carry una go back. Because the point I'm trying to make is that there is an intentionality. It's not for lack. So let me give you.
But it's not from them.
Our
from our
national
leaders.
television station, for instance. Let me use my media space.
Yeah.
If you go into those organizations, the kind of equipment they have, there's no other media house. In fact, sometimes you can argue that even across Africa, because they go for the best equipment, they go for everything. Why is the output the way it is? You understand? We need to be intentional about saying that. So it's not just enough for you to say, oh, we are crippled as a National Orientation Agency, blah, blah, blah. No. It is because you have chosen not to update yourself to a 21st century system. The only way corruption thrives is if there are still mundane things that can be manipulated. You know what technology can do. Wait, make I finish. We were within Nigeria. We were watching the elections from the US. Everybody was seeing the number. Election, in fact, as number one conversation. You can solve every electoral malpractice just digitizing the process. So I'm saying to you, and I'm putting it to you, Ikemesit, there is no willpower to want to correct this anomaly you're talking about.
I mean, I agree, but I think the operators on the civil service side are as much victims as they are practitioners of this. The political will from the people we elect, the people who approve their budgets, the people who, in the end, define their priorities, does not exist. And this is where we come in. If we say we want to make it a priority that we will attach certain service delivery benchmarks to institutional performance, and then we'll pay it to that. Take the minimum wage conversation, for example. I have a very contrarian perspective to it, which is basically, I understand we have a cost of living crisis situation, right? But what is the quality of your own delivery? If we pay you what we want to pay you, right, let's do a cost-benefit analysis. What do we get back as taxpayers? We also need to have that conversation. And that's where that's where us putting pressure on the people we elect, especially our elected representatives, especially our lawmakers, right? Because they have financial, budgetary oversight functions. They have committees that watch specific institutions, and those institutions report to them on a quarterly, or at the very least, a yearly basis, putting pressure on those people and basically saying, let's not talk about corruption in a pie in the sky manner. If you're saying our leaders are corrupt, in what sense? To what end? In what areas are those practices being manifested? Can we start attacking them one after the other? It's one thing to say, I have malaria and you're hydrating and all of that. It's another thing to say, I have malaria. Okay, what's the plan for dealing with it? There are two very different approaches.
Okay,
I think.
so let's take a very short break. I will come back for you. Stay with us. Nigeria, by extension, Africa, is faced with a lot of challenges.
With the growing youth population and very little engagement.
That is a ticking time bomb.
We're blessed people with a diverse culture who have a lot to say.
And yes, we are talking.
It is important we drive conversations that informs, inspires, and influences thoughts and actions.
If we say there is beauty in diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture.
We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation.
As we are the hope for the future,
Yesterday's conversation shaped today.
what are you saying to shape your tomorrow?
We know you have a lot to say, and we are here to hear you. All right, thanks for staying with us. If you just tuned in, I still have Ifweko and Ikeme sit with us. We're having a conversation on 25 years of democracy, and we're asking how has Nigeria progressed. Please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join this conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-8663. You can also call us on 070-2500-7749. That's the number to call if you want to join the conversation. Now, Ikeme sits. So this minimum wage argument that you just did before we went on the break was Uti's same argument about ensuring that the people, so before you make a demand, what value are you giving in return? You know, I need to be able to measure that, because it's just like you rightly said, in a private sector, you can't just walk up to your boss and say, increase my salary. On to what? What have you done? What value have you added? What are the things that you're going to be doing differently or you're going to be bringing? You understand? It's just the same thing. But again, I'm sure people like Faith would argue that the cost of living and everything is skyrocketing everywhere. So it would just make logical sense for us to just review certain kinds of numbers, because again, these numbers were kind of determined at a time where the country was a lot better, you know, in terms of economic stance. So there was a lot of flexibility to do a lot with very little, unlike now where everything has really gone off the roof. Let's keep all of that aside. They say that because they have argued that the fundamental problem that we're having in this country is constitutional. You know, if we truly want to change the conversation and then ask the right questions and find solutions, shouldn't we be starting from the institution that requires, you know, lawmaking and all of that? Which is me saying NS is fighting the wrong people. They should just go and occupy NAS, you know. So tell me.
As against cutting our power,
yes,
and shutting the airports.
Because people have died in all of those processes. So tell me, do you agree with a constitutional reform? And if it is yes, what exactly? Because I like what you said. It's not about just saying I have malaria. What exactly are we changing within that constitution? Secondly, where do you think the fight or the solution should start from?
Okay, so in terms of One thing, constitutional reform, of course. I mean, as a lawyer, fundamentally, talking to colleagues, also operating in this space, you see some of the, some of the glaring issues, right, around our democratic practice. So if we have an opportunity to do better, change things, adjust things, remove certain things, right, try different approaches. Yes, exactly. I'm up for it. I love the point you made though about asking the right questions and pairing that with the minimum wage. So let's have that conversation. First and foremost, I live in Nigeria. I pay taxes in Nigeria. I run a business in Nigeria. It's tough. I know it's tough, right? I got a grocery bill last week, and it was the grace of God that kept me from screaming. So I understand the pain. Yeah. So when I talk this way, I don't mean to sound insensitive, but we've had a situation where we've adjusted the minimum wage 6 times in Nigeria's post-independent history. So the minimum wage has gone from originally, right?
15?
Yeah, 350 shillings to 15 naira, and then on and on and on. And now we're at 30,000 naira. The question that I fundamentally ask is, if you've done something 6 times, but a cost of living crisis has eventually caught up with that, is that the right approach? Are we attacking the problem from the right perspective? That's my issue. Fundamentally, I think, in the end, a minimum wage rise, if you look at the structure of the federal and the state civil service, we really only impact about 10 to 12%, right, of the entire workforce. Because you're thinking, how many people do we know in government that earn 30,000 naira? Not many people. It's the cleaners, it's associated admin staff, and all of those things, right? So there's that bit. The problem with raising the minimum wage is that everybody across the rest of the pyramid tree will also ask for a pay rise. And this is where active citizens engagement comes into play. Many people don't know that, right? That conversation is usually not front and center because strikes are not happening over those concomitant wages. And in the end, those wage increases would also get up to the people who actually, in this sort of situation, are probably have the least defensible arguments to make that their salary should be increased. So everybody up to the permanent secretary will get a wage adjustment with this new rise. The second bit is that the private sector also needs to pay this. The minimum wage is a matter of law. When this entire negotiation process between the NLC and the government, right, rounds up and they agree a final number, that number will be put in a bill. The National Assembly would have to pass it, both the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. And then it will become a matter of law. Everybody, including your people here on wage, that are currently close to the minimum wage.
They should not come to me.
So that's the problem. So you want them to go for NAS, but you don't want them to go for you.
No, so I get you. I mean, I see, you're spot on, because this is the argument I've been shouting since when this minimum wage started.
Yep.
My point is we're fighting it wrongly. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yep.
There's a problem with the root. You are going to go and clean up the leaf to think that you're solving the problem. So I get it.
Yep.
And I've said it several times. You have continued to strike. What difference has it made? Nothing significant. So why don't we fight differently, and why don't we even kind of like look in other directions for solution? That's my argument with National Assembly, with the NLC.
And I think, so there's a very, very low-hanging fruit solution, which almost never gets discussed, which is, adjust, pair the minimum wage review to inflation. Right. So we take away this need for having fights and strikes every 3, 4, 5 years. So adjust and amend the law to say the national minimum wage will be periodically reviewed, say yearly, and it will, the minimum wage value will be inflation plus 3 or 4%, something like that.
Like a range.
Yeah, that
so you
way
solve the problem once and for all.
You solve it
once
once and
give
for
labor
all.
Power again.
Exactly. It even incentivizes the government to actually do something about inflation. Because if you don't do anything about inflation and inflation keeps rising, you have a bill to pay. It incentivizes the private sector to also engage directly with government around dealing with those priority areas that will eventually bring down inflation. Because also for the private sector, inflation will adjust the minimum wage automatically. It's what we do as a business, for example. Every year we review our pay scales, right, to account for inflation. It's automatic. It's in everyone's contracts. We don't have a conversation about it. So people are not coming to meet management to say, hey, I need a bit more money. Everybody knows if the country is bad, I'm getting an automatic wage increase. We can't do that at a national level.
I think I've gotten a wage increase last year. I've gotten one this year just to match up with all the inflation. So, but we don't, I think private sector, they actually do it. People in private sector, they just adjust as inflation comes. But I think when you said asking the right questions, I think what the focus should be on is how do we improve the economy? Why are we not solving the economic problem? Because we can keep increasing salaries and everything, purchasing power will never really improve, but you're just increasing the numbers as far as I'm concerned. What we should be addressing is how do we solve this economic problem that we have?
We're not being productive.
We're not being productive as a nation. How do we get back to productivity? We're losing a lot of companies out of Nigeria. How do we make those companies stay? How do we even build more? How do we even make our own citizens more productive? That's what we need to be addressing. And I think these things are simple things, but they are also hard things. The fact is that we don't have the willpower. I don't believe in constitutional change, maybe, because I always have the mindset that if you have the right people in place, whatever constitution or whatever, let's say now that people are talking about regional governments and all, I don't believe in all those things. I just believe that if you have people that have the mind to really serve the people, the citizens themselves, they will get the job done, whatever structure they are operating in. And I think that if we go back to regional, we'll come back here again. If we still have the same set of people that currently running this system, run regional, it's still the same thing. So we just have to focus on getting the right people in power. For me, that's the simple thing to do. It's simple, but it's very difficult.
Yeah, I love the point that she made, right? So because this is something, like you said, that I think about every day for a living, there are some really, really basic things that we can do that would make a dramatic impact on this cost of living situation. You should not make it difficult, at least in the short term, for people to import things, especially food. Especially food.
Well, the president actually came out to say that imports, food and drugs would actually
Why do we have to wait?
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's that. So, even if it is temporary, for the next 12 to 18 months,
Thank you.
right, just let people get things into the country. Let's get a handle on food prices. Food is what the average Nigerian household spends the most money on, and that pie has been increasing on and on and on. We did research last year that showed it's now 90%. It's 90%, right? So that means for education, for health, for all of those other spending priorities, people are borrowing. Either from family or from institutions. You're in fintech, so you see this.
No, we did a lot of borrowing.
Exactly.
Customs.
Oh, that's massive.
Pegging your fees to exchange rate.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, there's that. To be fair to government,
They also peg customs at 800 naira.
Yeah, so I was going to say, because you and I were, you
on taxation.
Yes, on taxation. So there's some very good proposals on the table, right? So decoupling import duties from the exchange rate until the exchange, there's a lot more stability there. That's very critical. That's very important. There are some sectors they want to also exempt from new taxes: health, transport, education. Very big sectors. Very huge chunks of spending.
What about agri?
That's also good. The challenge.
What about agri? I mean,
the challenge.
We are talking about food problem. People that want to go into mechanized farming, for them, we don't have the technology here. So most of these, processing plants and all of these mechanized infrastructure they would require to run big farms and produce in numbers. They have to import them. So why are they not also focusing on reducing the customs duty on those?
Why are we pegging? We're in Nigeria economy. We're using Naira, right? That's what they say. They want us to focus on Naira, on paper.
Yeah.
So why are we pegging?
No, I mean, obviously, part of the issue, and I actually had this conversation with a couple of people, which is that it appears as though customs is implying that they are collecting duties in foreign currency.
Yes.
Right? Or foreign currency equivalents. So even if they're pricing in Naira with a foreign currency mentality.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I think part of the challenge, and this brings us back to the conversation we're having about institutions, right, is that we've allowed the last 3 administrations, including this one, to retool the focus of our agencies, our ministries, departments as agencies towards revenue generation. That can have its advantages in that if you're collecting taxes and if you're collecting revenue genuinely, you're targeting right, the rates are not too high, that's extra money, obviously, for the government to do all the things that they want to do. The problem is, if you make that their primary focus, everybody enters rent-seeking mode. So it's give me money, give me money, give me money. We don't care about what the impact of this on your business, the impact of this on the end price, the impact of this on having access to those technologies that you're talking about.
There's a friend that had to import something into Nigeria. It was crazy. The person almost had a heart attack when the custom gave the bill. You talked about exemptions, education, health, food. That business is within these three sectors. And yet, so I like the policies that they are on paper, right? But implementing those policies, you never see them happen. So going back to our question around how far has Nigeria progressed? Because it seems like we take one step forward and we go 1,000 steps backwards. That's how we feel.
Yeah.
Because it means most times you see it, but it's not there. Was it 2 weeks or last week? It was last week. Dangote was complaining about how IOCs are not selling, crude to him. They would rather want to carry that crude and take it out of the country. And you are the same country, you are complaining that the prices of import of petrol is high. If you really want to solve the import problem, somebody has taken the pain to invest heavily on processes. So that's to tell you that those modular refineries that we have and some of the other refineries that we have, it is not really comatose like you think.
Yeah.
It is the fact that some people would rather earn in Forex. See, there's so much insincerity within the system, right? So if we say how far we have progressed, I feel like we're not going anywhere. We're just dancing around in circles. If we truly want to solve the problem, take the bull by the horn and fight this problem. And just, end it once and for all. We talked about subsidy removal, right? Subsidy is gone. The whole place went haywire. Now we are hearing 2 days ago that something came from the back end. And because if you talk about the pegging, the cost, the landing cost does not commensurate with the pump price.
Yeah. It's higher.
So what are we saying?
So someone is paying somewhere.
So where is the sincerity in all of this?
Okay. So I had a certain type of response, but you included the Dangote one into the mix, and I don't think I'm on Dangote. I think the argument he was making was a bit funny, but I'll leave that because that's not our conversation. Our conversation today is about democracy. I think, and this, I would adopt a bit of a wider view, right, on this. I think democracy globally is having a moment, and not a very good moment.
Yeah.
Right?
All over.
If you compare...
Lawyer, you want to run away from
Nigeria? No. I'm not running away from Nigeria.
We're having far left,
no, I'm not running away from Nigeria.
Far right,
yeah, exactly.
Problems everywhere.
I'm just saying Nigeria's democratic challenges are not unique.
They're not unique.
Practically every democracy
around the world. You talked about institutions, and I'm telling you that the institutions that will make this country governable...
I agree. I completely agree. That's why I think a lot of our anger, a lot of our advocacy, a lot of our engagement work has to go to them. It's almost as though, especially if you're a private sector player in this country or you're someone who is just trying to get educated and informed, it's like we give all of these institutions a pass. I was very heartened at the level of anger and frustration and disappointment that was expressed against INEC. Because I think for the first time in INEC's history, people really, to use social media parlance, they really gave it to them. They really told them, I was going to use words that are not safe for television, but you really, with all of the resources, with all of the promises we made, with all of the things you talked about, beavers, with all of the international buy-in that you got, there are countries right now that will not engage with INEC anymore because of what happened last year. And I like it. We need consequences for bad behavior. When you live in a consequence-free paradigm, people will keep misbehaving. So if for some reason the rules of engagement from customs, for example, changes from make as much money as you can from as many people as you can every year to a situation like you have in China, for example, where you're measured on how much time this good that enters this country leaves this place.
This place.
Do you get? Once you change the
changes
incentives,
everything.
people will conform. We're not blockheaded. We're not inherently stubborn.
We're actually very intelligent.
We're
people.
very, very attuned to incentives.
Yeah.
We just need to change the incentives. And that's only really going to happen when you have pushback, when you have people who would say, like these companies that are voting with their feet. It's a consequence of, the way we've managed the economy. Maybe when we lose half to three-quarter of FDI that's already settled, patient capital that's already landed here in this country, it would make us rethink our strategy.
Rethink our strategy. I don't think so. In all honesty. Well, let me hear your thoughts. You are in the lending space, right? You talk about credit and you talk about
2008. We had a lot of people buying brand new cars, right? And these were not senior executives. They were junior guys. I was young in my career. I could buy a brand new car. Today, kind of an executive, but I can't buy a car because I look at that price. So I don't know. When we talk about the fintech side, the financial side, I don't think we've made much progress. And also, back to what you said, I think that I'm of the opinion that we stop comparing our democracy with other democracies. I think that we are at that point where we need to define our own democracy for ourselves, right? It's so easy because when you hear people that are not doing well, they will tell you, oh, the US is currently going through their own challenges, far left, far right, 2 candidates and all that. That's the US. They still have institutions. They still have a lot of things happening for them. But for us, we're still far away from it. Some years back, we're better than China. But now, can we even say anything? We can't. So for me, we have to sit down as a people, and we need to agree as a people, where do we want to go? And having that is a difficult question or a difficult thing to do, but I will still say, in my own simple words, I am very hopeful. I have faith when I look at the younger generation that is coming up, not the Gen Zs, the ones after.
What did they do to you?
The ones after.
All right.
I'm so happy about when I listen to them, you kind of know that there's another generation that has been born. So I think that when you listen to that group, you kind of know that there's hope.
Not Gen Z.
I don't know. There's a gap. You kind of know that there's hope. So yes, I'm very hopeful that we will get it right. It's going to be a long journey, but we'll get it right. Okay. What happened in the last election showed that we are on the path to getting it right. And for the record, I went through a lot when INEC did what they did. And I was out of social media for some days. Oh, okay. Just for the record. It was so painful.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you are in the judiciary. Now you bring your leg. I didn't want to talk about the legal side. How well do you think?
I'm in the legal profession. Let's be as accurate as we can.
You're in the judiciary. So, I mean, you're a legal practitioner,
yes.
Right? How well do you think our judiciary, or what do you call them? Yes, the judiciary. How well do you think they've done in preserving? Because again, when institutions fail, or maybe executive fail and all of those things, there are other institutions that you can take them to that are kind of independent, that will hold those other people accountable. A lot of people have lost faith in our judicial structure, believing that, you hear people, that's why you still see things around jungle justice and all of that. Do you think we've truly failed as a judiciary in 1 minute?
I think the judiciary has underperformed. I don't think they've done well enough to give comfort even to a lot of us who regularly interface with them. And so I know where she's coming from because I actually used to work in judicial administration at one point in time. And the thing about being an impartial, or being in a position where you should be an impartial arbiter, is that if you make one mistake, everyone is on you. If you make a couple of mistakes, it becomes a pattern, it becomes established behavior. Think about how football fans, for example, are always on the case of referees, right? And it's the same extension of that dynamic with the judiciary. From the fact that cases are not heard, reasonably in double quick time, you can. Our mutual friend, Chetan Wanze, I can say this because he talks about this. He's had a particular case that has been circulating in the court system for 8 years, something like that, right? That's a lot. There's a cost implication to that.
Yeah.
There's also in the area of mental health. There's also an mental and emotional cost, right? To that. You also have a situation where technology, if you're talking about a sector which has almost completely skipped the technological age. I think the judiciary is up there.
Is one.
Judges are still required by law. This is where legislative action becomes very important. They're still required by law and procedure to write down proceedings. Stenographers are not necessarily allowed to use technology to the widest extent possible. So all of that adds to the cost of doing business in Nigeria. So I wasn't going to, were you expecting me to defend you? I wasn't necessarily going to.
No, me just they talk. Because, you see, it is, now willpower.
I'm sorry, what? Can I add one very quick point to the point she made? Nigeria could be in a worse state. Think about Nigeria now, but without the digital economy, without social media, without the level and the quality of life. We could have been in a worse place. And I've been to worse places, so I can tell you.
Thank you so much. We had fun, you see. It was nice doing this with you. Has democracy progressed? That is from our dear, beautiful Daniel Ilo. He says, the answer is a capital no. How do you define democracy? It is not the government of the people. Is it not the government of the people, for the people, and by the people? The answer is that we are practicing the total opposite. This is a government of the government, by the government, and for the government, and nothing more. We only talk democracy, but we fail to put it into practice. This democracy only favors the government and not the masses. If we say that we practice democracy, then why is it difficult for the government to approve ordinary 250K? Daniel, let's hear what he can talk. You make things very difficult for people and you claim you practice democracy. My dear beautiful sister in the studio made mention of having a good and reliable government to be able to practice democracy truly and genuinely. My summary is that we have not progressed since this past 25 years of democracy, and we talk too much in this country, and yet we do not do anything. This is very, very sad. Pele Odan Ilo is not happy today. But thank you so much, Ikeme, Satan, and Fako. I think we had fun. We should do this again. Don't worry, I'll bring that down. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. If you missed our quote for today, here it is again. Democracy is about the people, by the people, and for the people. It is not about the politicians. It is about the citizens. This was from Obi Ezekwesili. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy.